I'd like to bring on board the Federalist's own Mollie Hemingway. Hi, Mollie. How's the weather where you are?
It's great, and I love to talk about nothing but the weather.
Oh, well. And get $5 million for it.
Yeah, I think that this was a very plausible story that was told by Democrats yesterday, that our president has a secret passion for meteorology that he only discloses with people who happen to be business associates of his son when they're having phone calls and meetings. I find it completely believable. I don't know about you.
Well, look, before my dad passed to his reward, whenever I was closing a large deal as a Los Angeles trial lawyer, I would call Dad up, ask how the weather was in Redondo Beach, check it. Sometimes he'd throw in about how the zucchini were growing. I know I did that. That's a real thing that occurred in real life. Mollie, I'd like to ask you, because I know the Federalist approached this yesterday. Now that we have 7 grandchildren, where is Navy not Biden's shell company? Because, I mean, she's got to get paid too, right?
Well, clearly. I mean, President Biden and his wife said that they are willing to acknowledge the reality that they have 7 grandchildren. But I think if that's really true, that they are truly acknowledging her, the 7th grandchild, that means that they will be filling her coffers with money from foreign oligarchs like every single other Biden family member allegedly has.
Well, I think we're getting past the allegedly part into the yeah, I know part. The New York Times actually kind of accepted the undeniable. It writes at the beginning of its articles yesterday, you're going to love this. It has long been known that the elder Mr. Biden at times interacted with his son's business partners. Do you think anybody who only reads the New York Times actually knew that the elder Mr. Biden at times interacted with his son's business partners? Because I don't think so.
Yeah, I thought it was a stunning line from the New York Times, whose readers have to be the most misinformed people on the planet. Not just the New York Times, but President Biden himself have denied that there were interactions with his son's business associates. Those denials took place, for instance, on national debate stages when Joe Biden said that it was, that he'd never had any interaction with his son's business associates. It was always implausible. It was something that never should have been bought. We've already had other business associates say that President Biden functioned as the chairman of the Biden company in that, sort of like in a family-led business, who's the boss. And the New York Times and other publications have said, well, there's no evidence that there's money going directly into Joe Biden's bank accounts. And it's like, well, that's not how this thing operates. It operates. The whole point is to show that you have access to Joe Biden and that you get deliverables that you pay for. And yesterday we learned precisely how those deliverables worked with the Burisma company.
Well, Mollie Hemingway of the Federalist, back in Washington, D.C., there's about 100% chance of a heat wave. What do you think the percent chance is of an impeachment?
Yeah, I think it's getting extremely likely. And it'll be interesting because of the fact that the corporate media have not covered the story of the Biden family business. And now they're going to have to, assuming that either Merrick Garland or Joe Biden himself gets impeached or that evidence starts getting put out there. They're going to have to cover it, and they're going to have to start lying a lot more. They've been able to kind of ignore and move this away. And with impeachment for corruption of the type that was alleged yesterday in Congress about how Joe Biden personally intervened to get someone fired who was investigating the company that his son was on the board of, I mean, that's explosive. It's just absolutely, this is so beyond any president in the modern history of what we've had alleged about corruption.
Well, Mollie Hemingway, here's what I think is going to happen when he's impeached, because I don't think there's any way not to do it. When they have the impeachment trial, I think the regime media simply will not report the evidence. It simply will not do it. It'll replay, it'll just instead of reporting facts, it'll just have commentary like another day where the Republicans, produce nothing. And, of course, the Republicans are going to produce all sorts of stuff. I think we've kind of crossed a Rubicon of shamelessness here. I don't think we I don't think they care at all about what they do, what they say, about the preserving the institutions. I think they're willing to burn it all down for short-term gain.
Well, Kurt, I think we crossed that Rubicon several years ago.
Well, yeah.
I was just reviewing media coverage of the first impeachment trial, which was about President Trump asking questions about this very same story that we now know is, completely true as told by Hunter Biden's best friend and business partner, Devin Archer. And the way that the Washington Post and Reuters and other corporate media wrote it up, they would say, Donald Trump made up a crazy story about Joe Biden's son being on the board of Burisma and getting money and, someone getting fired. And they would say, they would just assert that it was made up and it was all completely true. And it's just amazing. They would assert without evidence that it was made up. And they would just say that and they would print that. And I absolutely expect they will continue to do that.
I think in some ways we're still moving forward in a default mode where, look, based people like you and me who know what time it is, we expect the lies. We don't get upset. We don't, tear our hair out about the hypocrisy because we understand the hypocrisy is based in. Normal people, I don't think they do. And I think they still think, well, if there's something bad here, well, it's going to get reported. There's going to be justice. And when they see it doesn't happen again and again and again, I think there's going to be a embasoning of normal Americans. What kind of effect will we see down the road as people begin, regular people, not us crazy people who follow politics, as they see that everything they saw in Schoolhouse Rock is a lie?
Yeah, I do worry about this, actually. I think it's a very big threat to the republic that our elite leaders and institutions have done so much to make sure that people aren't held accountable for wrongdoing, that we have a weaponized Department of Justice and two rules of law, one for friends of the regime, one for opponents of the regime. It's the type of thing that could topple a great republic. And I feel like our leaders are playing with fire and they don't, I don't know if they don't realize it or they don't care, but it is extremely worrisome just how much our institutions are crumbling here.
Well, speaking of the Rubicon, the reason Caesar crossed it with a legion is because he understood that if he put down his proconsular command, he was going to be the victim of lawfare. And what I see is people use the power they have. The people with the institutions use the institutional power. The people fighting back, they're going to use their own kind of power, and I don't think that ends well. We got about 30 seconds, Mollie.
Well, it's very important, though, to understand that people do have power here that they can exercise in elections. A lot of this can be litigated through elections, and Americans should not give up hope given how many tens of millions of people do understand what time it is and what needs to be done. So I hope they will continue to work through proper means and channels to save our great republic.
Well, look, the answer to every question and every problem we as Americans have, I think, lies in our Constitution and in our real traditions and customs and norms. Unfortunately, they're taking a battering right now. It's up to us to enforce them.